Now I'd like to explore a few different methods to help us become more in tune with our breath. So first of all, I'll ask you simply just to bring your attention to your breath, just your natural breath, just the fact that you are breathing. So just take a moment or two and try to resist the urge to change our breath, even though I know that's it's always very tempting the minute we begin to think about our breath that we try to change it in some way. But just settle into bringing our attention just to the fact that we are breathing in a natural way, the natural way that we breathe. And now I'll ask you to see over the course of the next few breaths if there's any point in that cycle where you feel your breath most strongly. Okay, if you're more sensitive to it, perhaps as on the inhale, you might feel the relative coldness of your breath as it passes through your nostrils. You might feel your breath perhaps more at the back of your throat as you continue to inhale. You might feel it more as you feel your chest expand and your tummy expand. You might feel it more at the pause at the end of that inhale. Perhaps you might feel it more on the exhale. You might feel it as your chest falls and your tummy goes closer to your spine. You might feel it as it rushes up past the back of your throat again, and you might feel the relative warmth of it as it exits through your nostrils. Likewise, you might feel it more at that natural pause at the end of your exhale. Just ask you now to try and see if there's one point in that cycle where you're more sensitive to your breath. If you have found a point where you are more sensitive to your breath, we'll call this point your anchor point. And so it can be very, very useful when you're beginning either your formal mindfulness practice or your informal one where you just want to bring your attention to your breath. It's really helpful now that you have found your anchor point. So when you think, okay, I'm going to start focusing on my breath now, you go straight to that anchor point. So say for example, my anchor point is the pause, that natural pause at the end of my inhale. So I'm going to go to there. I'm going to find that point, and that's going to bring me more in tune with my breathing, much quicker, much more strongly. Okay. Now for some people, they mightn't have been able to find an anchor point. Perhaps they're equally sensitive to their breathing throughout. Okay, that's perfectly possible as well. And then other people, then they might find it really uncomfortable to even try and bring their attention to their breath. So what I'll suggest in these two scenarios is instead of then trying to find their anchor point, you could consider going through the process of breathing in to the count of 5. So we're inhaling 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we exhale for the count of 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You might find that it's very useful for people whose minds continue to churn and churn and churn, because what it's doing, if you're counting, you're inhaling for the count of 5, it's actually giving your mind something to do as well. So you're focusing on your breath and it's keeping your mind active by counting. Okay, so we inhale for the count of 5 and then we exhale for the count of 7. Another lovely method is if you imagine that you're standing on a nice lovely beach. You're not in the water now, you don't have to be in the water, but it's a nice warm sandy day, and then if you could just visualize the sea, and then as the tide is coming in, you can inhale in the same rhythm as the tide. So when you see the tide coming in, you can inhale and you feel that lovely calmness, as you inhale, and then you can exhale in conjunction with the tide as well. So it's actually keeping your mind active as well, and it's still bringing your attention to your breath. And then for the case of somebody who is uncomfortable with attention on their breathing for whatever reason, it can be helpful then to bring your attention to a different sense, So we could bring our attention to how our foot feels against the sole of our shoe, perhaps. Or we could bring our attention to something, how our fingers feel against a hard surface or a cold surface. Just making sure that what we're focusing on is something very real, something that our senses are bringing to us now. We could use it, we could have a mindful walk where you feel each step as your foot touches the ground. Okay, you could have a mindful eating where you feel, you taste each piece of food that you chew it really mindfully, that you're really keeping in tune with what is actually happening now. Equally so with smells and with sight. So being mindful, trying to stay in the present. We're trying to live. We're not trying to waste any moment of this precious life by spending it in the past where there's absolutely nothing we can do or change, and we're not trying not to spend our time worrying about what may or may not happen in the future. What we're trying to do is we're trying to always remember this lovely precious gift of this life that we have now, and trying to make sure that we don't miss a second of it.